In 2024, I achieved a lifelong dream of mine, which was to be the top American at every single race that I did. And yeah, I did have to move to Europe.
I'm studying abroad here in the city of Europe.
Europe's a continent.
That's not what continent means, dog.
If you're new here, my name's Ernie. I'm a triathlete from the United States living in Spain, and this is my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm gonna do a high-level overview of everything that went on for me in 2024, all of the different places that I lived, the training that I did, and go through some of the general statistics like my overall volume, each of the 5 races, and then what you can expect from me in 2025 moving forward and what my goals for the year are. Make sure that you subscribe because there's going to be quite a few videos that are going to branch out of this particular video where I'm going to do deep dives on why I moved to Spain, how I did it, the financials behind it, as well as some more triathlon stuff where I'll go deeper into my sub 8-hour Ironman that I did in Ironman Barcelona. So we're going to start off this video with all of the different places that I lived throughout the year in 2024. And we're gonna start it all the way back in America in Tucson, Arizona, home of the world famous shootout. Now I lived with my friend Bill Freeze. He's a former college swimmer and he's a current Raytheon employee. He had a nice house that he just purchased right off of a main road in Tucson, about a 3-minute jog from the bike path. So it was perfect for training. Bill was nice enough to rent me a spare room, and that was super awesome. I was there from the beginning of January all the way till midway through February, and it was great because I was able to just roll out of bed, hit the Tucson shootout group ride in the morning on Saturdays, and it was just really close proximity to a lot of my friends and great training overall in Tucson, Arizona. One day I was laying in bed in the morning and I got a text from Alistair Brownlee asking me if I had gone to Girona yet. And my plan for the entire year was to move to Girona and be on the digital nomad visa because I qualified, and that will be an entire separate video. But basically, I needed an excuse to leave Tucson to go to Girona, and I couldn't go before a certain date because I didn't have enough days left in my original visa. So I needed to time it well, and luckily this text came at the perfect time for me. I was able to get on a flight basically a couple weeks later. The next thing I knew it, I was in Alicante training with Alistair Brownlee and the rest of the Leeds Triathlon crew, and it was awesome. I spent 3 weeks in a town called Lanusia where we were swimming at the pull-up pool and then riding in Calpe and all around that area, the Col de Rats, all of those iconic roads that you see Tadej Pogačar just lighting up like a Christmas tree. Quite an incredible experience. So that was place number 2 that I lived. Place number 3 that I've lived now is Girona, which is where I have lived since March of 2024. I also spent a bunch of time in Girona last year, and I want to give a huge shout out to my roommate, Kegaji Keegan Swerble. He's the only reason I'm in Girona. He's just the man, had the original apartment, and now we're lucky enough to have a beautiful new crib, Plaza del V. We have a great 4-bedroom apartment. There have only been 2 or 3 minor plumbing issues that resulted in shit all over the floor, but overall, it's been a really positive experience here. Those are the 3 places I've lived throughout the year. It's really only Tucson and then 2 different towns in Spain. One of them was Lanusia, which I knew was temporary. And then I'm finally now settled into Girona where I'm here for the foreseeable future. All right, now let's shift gears and get into the overall trainings. That's what I do. I'm a triathlete. I'm also a digital nomad, but primarily my focus is triathlon. And so this year I trained for 1,004 hours total. So that's around 3 hours a day doing whatever I wanted for myself, obviously within limits. My coach writes my training. Shout out to Elliot Bassett. Let's break down how these 1,000 hours went across swim, bike, run. And I want to emphasize that this is only my swim, bike, run training. There were also other sessions involved, and I'll go into details on those later. The swim was 656,000 yards, which is 217.446 meters. Most of that was done in the long course pool, the Jeg. There's not a lake that I can easily access here that smells good. Some people go to Banyoles. It smells awful in Banyuls. I do not know how people do it or why they'd put themselves through it. Plus there's a buoy line, which means you're essentially just swimming in a pool. You don't actually have to sight, which kind of kills the point of open water swimming. Anyway, I digress. That's the swim volume for the year, primarily in the 50-meter pool at the Jeg here in Girona. On the bike, I did 540 hours, which came out to over 10,000 miles. I did 10,889 miles. We're not going to translate that into kilometers, but it's a lot of them. My altimeter on the Garmin broke, so at Koros, hit me up. I've got my Garmin, but I'm definitely open to deals because I don't know exactly how much elevation gain that I did to an accurate point. And on the run, my mileage was around 1,700. It was 1,762 miles, 225 hours of running. And again, there were quite a bit of hills in there, a lot on the trails. There's a ton of aerobic training, but that's the breakdown across swimming, biking, and running, how it played out throughout the year. And another thing I want to add on is every single day I am foam rolling and I am doing a thoracic spine mobility routine. So that can take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. Plus, on top of that, I do 2 yoga sessions and 2 Pilates sessions in the range of 20 to 40 minutes each per week. So let's add on 2 hours a week of those extra. I really want to emphasize that it's super cool to be a triathlete where you get to spend 1,000 hours a year on just yourself. There are tons of jobs out there where you're not doing anything for yourself. And it's a super cool position to be in where I'm able to say, hey, I put this much time into purely just me and my health and my performance. Whether or not I'm successful doesn't really matter as much as that I'm trying to put something together that's just for me. Now let's get into the fun part, the racing. I only raced 5 times throughout 2024 and 3 of them were in Spain. I started off the season with 70.3 Valencia, which honestly I thought was one of my best ever races. And although the result was a solid 38th place, this was also the largest pro field that's ever been assembled for a 70.3. There were 90 guys and we were all diving in off of the ledge. There was no swim warm up. So you just had to dive in and hope for the best. I came out of the water around 2 minutes down from the leader, which is Leo Berger, who ended up actually being 3rd at 70.3 Worlds this year. I was with Arno Guillot and Will Menison on the bike. Those are 2 guys who in previous races I would have had no business riding with, but after a solid training camp with Brownlee and the Leeds crew, I suddenly felt like I made that step up on the bike and I was able to ride with those guys for the entire first half of the ride. And I ended up coming off the bike only a few minutes down from some of the best guys and I split a 1:13 run. I finished in 3:52, but was only 3 minutes back from George Goodwin, who's a former European champ. And if you did the math, there were guys finishing every 20 seconds after the 3 minute down from Leo mark. So it was a very, very tight and competitive race. There was a super deep field of solid guys, and I was really happy to finally feel like I was in the mix for the race. It was an indicator that I was fit. So the next thing I did was headed off to Mallorca, which is a beautiful island in the sun, and I raced the 70.3 there. And I came out of the water on Andy Dreitz's feet. I ended up having a decent ride, but I was a little bit sick, so my power was lacking up the climb, and it really showed. I really struggled on that section. I lost a decent amount of time, but I only came off the bike about 2 or 3 minutes behind Patrick Lang, and ended up running a 1:16 split. Was in a great battle with Nick Thies. He ended up getting the better of me. I ended up in 20th place. It wasn't an amazing result, but again, I knew I was in really good shape, and I was ready to move forward onto the next big target for me, which was Ironman Austria. Ironman Austria was the big target for me the first half of the season. I haven't put together a really great Ironman and I really wanted to do it. And I thought this would be a really good course for me. It's historically a wetsuit swim, a hard-ish bike, and then the run course is also definitely challenging because there's not very many sections where you can zone in and have a good rhythm. And so I've focused a ton on this race. Ended up going 8:13, running a 2:52 marathon. I ended up placing 10th, which earned me $1,000. I was absolutely thrilled to get some money finally for the first time in years. It was a ton of validation for the hard work I've put in, not only this year, but for previous years. So after Austria, it was a little bit of a break. And then I headed off to Czechia with my boy Blake Pfeiffer, who unfortunately had a crash in the days leading into the race and couldn't participate. Czechia was another massive breakthrough for me where I I ended up in 6th. I went 3:47. I was in a battle for 4th place on the run before I actually just imploded, but I had caught quite a few guys. I rode super fast, and that was my first time really bridging the gap to the front of a race on the bike. Aside from the 2 leaders who were way ahead, I was in contention basically the entire ride, which was a huge step forward for me. And I knew that with a couple more weeks of training, I could knock it out of the park in Ironman Barcelona potentially. So Ironman Barcelona was a massive day for me. I ended up breaking 8 hours. I went 7:53 and ran a 2:41 marathon. I didn't have the ideal swim where I started a little bit too far back. There were just a lot of guys in the field, and I was in the 4th row, which was really a bummer. And that was a positioning error on my part that I probably will never make again. If there are 20 guys and I'm finishing in the top 20, I need to be lining up on that start line, on that front, because that's where I belong, at least in my head. But I do think I belong on the front line there. And I know that if I can get out in the right group, I can stay on the feet. And so I just missed the right swim group. I ended up in a little bit easier of a swim group than I wanted to be in. I got on the bike. The bike was a little bit easier than I wanted it to be. I came off the bike. I felt good. I ran a pretty fast marathon. I had the 2nd fastest split behind Dylan Mangian for the last 10K. So that was a huge step forward for me, running 2:41 off the bike. I was absolutely thrilled with that. I'm gonna do a full breakdown video of the sub 8 hour performance. I'm gonna highlight some of the sessions that I did into it and also go over some of the volume, but that's an entirely different video that's much bigger than this one. So to recap the racing, I raced 3 times in Spain, 1 time in Czechia, and 1 time in Austria. My best time over the Ironman this year was a 7:53, and my best time over the half distance was a 3:47. I did split 2:41 marathon and a 1:13 half marathon. Those were some pretty big jumps for me, and I was really happy with my gains. And I think that I really set myself up for a big year in 2025. Also, I want to recap that I did only make $1,000 in prize money throughout the year. What can you expect from me going forward this year in 2025? My big goal for the year is to qualify for Ironman World Championships in Nice. That's just a 5-hour drive for me here. The race that I'm gonna try to qualify for this at is Ironman Austria, so I'll be back there in June. I'd also really like to target some half distance races throughout Europe, earn some cash at them, and if I can get a slot to 70.3 Worlds in Marbella, I will 100% take it. But regardless, I will still be in Marbella with my boy Blake. He will be interning it up. I will be there cheering. I've got several athletes there racing, so it'll be a really cool experience. So let's recap the video. We went through 2024, why it was a solid year for me. I showed you how much I was training across the board in 2024. I also went through every single race I did a brief 411 recap, and then we went through what's gonna be going down in 2025. And that I'm gonna be trying to qualify for Nice. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, leave a comment for the algorithm, and keep following along because it's gonna be a sick year for your boy.